Yo, what's going on, everybody? It's your boy MB, and welcome back to Tacos and Touchdown, the first episode of 2025. And I got special guest, managing editor for Seahawks Wire, Kole Musgrove. How's it going, Cole?
Hey man, it's doing great. Thank you for having me on. It's been a while, but happy to be here.
Yeah, I appreciate you for being here, especially since we just hired a former offensive coordinator of the Seahawks, Brian Schottenheimer. He had his press conference today. I like what I heard from him. I wish
Mhm.
I had heard less from the Joneses. We're not going to go into that because yeah, that was a piece of work just hearing Jerry Jones ramble and Stephen Jones talk about the cap. Like that's like his third child or something like that. So I'm gonna leave it at that.
As a Mariners fan who is perpetually annoyed with an owner that won't spend or go get free agents or do the necessary steps to go to the next level, I can empathize with any frustration with Jerry Jones. I'm right there.
It feels good to know that we're not the only team in sports franchise that got to deal with an owner like Jerry, but Jerry's a different type of guy. That's all I can say about him.
If he could just be a little more hands off, they might be better off. But then of course, Steven's right there. So I don't know what the
Yeah.
solution. I don't know what the solution is there.
Yeah, there's really not a solution. You just kind of hope they kind of ease off eventually, just a little bit off the break, and just let it the coaches be the coaches, let the scouts and Will McClay do their thing, but that's not their thing. They're like they want to be have their hand in everything. So
Too many cooks in the kitchen.
yeah, we just need one cook in each section, but they want to be in everything. But
Absolutely.
Well, let's get into some about Brian Schottenheimer. So, I wanted you on the show just to tell me about his time with the Seahawks and what do you think contributed to success when it came to running the ball well with him? Because I'm looking at the stats when he was there from 2018 to 2020, and when it came to like third down, y'all were first and fourth and 12th, but y'all kept a solid run game with Chris Carson's and at the end of Marshawn Lynch and some other guys. What do you think what kept the run game so successful during those times?
Well, just kind of going back to those years. Those are the last. Those are some fun years with the offense. I mean, that was kind of the genesis of the let Russ Cook moment. Kind of the rise of Russell Wilson, showing that he really is an MVP kind of candidate back in those days. Winding the clock back to 2017, Hawks missed the playoffs for the first time with Russell Wilson. They go 9-7, and they cannot run the ball. I think they had one rushing touchdown that was by a running back. Other than that, Russell Wilson accounted for every other touchdown that year. There was even one game against the Texans where he accounted for like 108% of the offensive output, which I don't know how that math works out. Bottom line, it was all exclusively on rush. They could not run the ball, which led to the eventual ouster of Darrell Bevell, who had been the offensive coordinator since 2011. It was the first time in the peak years that they were switching over to from a long-time offensive coordinator to Schottenheimer. And there was some skepticism at the time because he'd been with the Jets, he'd been kind of with the Rams, kind of bounced around. Really, Schottenheimer was excellent as an offensive coordinator in Seattle, and he got the run game going. Now, there's times he maybe committed a little bit too much to the run, like for example, when the Seahawks lost to the Cowboys in the wild card round, they probably could have started throwing it a little sooner than they did until at the end of the game. But what I think made Schottenheimer his offense so effective at the run was he really truly committed to running the ball. Hence the all the memes about Pete Carroll establishing the run, focusing on that. But no, he really focused on it. And judging by how the Seahawks operated this year with Ryan Grubb, I would have loved to have Brian Schottenheimer back calling the plays. It would have been a lot more, create a little bit better of an identity. So I personally was always a huge fan of Brian Schottenheimer. A lot of us here in Seattle were as well. Some of us were even kind of hoping that maybe the Seahawks bring him back as offensive coordinator. Unfortunately, that didn't work out. Well, I mean, not unfortunately. I mean, he got a wonderful opportunity in Dallas, and good for him getting his first head coaching gig. Which, by the way, and then I guess my question is, he didn't call the plays for you guys last few years. How does he get the head coaching gig?
Yeah,
I'm
when
just
it
I'm kind of
comes
curious how that worked out.
That's a great question. When it came to Mike McCarthy, he wanted to do the play call. So basically, he was just an analyst and kind of
Mhm,
basically dipping his toe a little bit into the offense, but it didn't really make any sense to me. But I know Mike McCarthy was on the short lease of his contract, so I guess it was kind of like a prove it deal. So it really
mhm,
was just basically there to know scout like the opposing defenses and everything in his first year, and then he got into the offensive play duty. But it didn't make any sense to me because I wanted to see what Schottenheimer's offense looked like. Like you were talking about,
mhm,
y'all ran the ball effectively. This last year, we didn't start running the ball decently until we put Rico in there. And I think that's when you've seen a little bit of Brian Schottenheimer's offense in the offense with Mike McCarthy. But when it came to him getting hired, this team loves to keep in-house of coaches, and when it was between Mike Zimmer or Brian Schottenheimer, I think they were going to lean towards the offense because they want to have an offensive mind coach. And Brian Schottenheimer has that experience, like you were saying, with the Jets, the Rams, and the Seahawks, of course, and a little bit of college. I think because I know there was a one time early in his career he was talking about he had an opportunity to be an offensive head coach, but he didn't take it because he didn't feel like it was the right moment. But I think he's a good hire. I like what we got him, but there's you wish they kind of interviewed the Aaron Glenn's, the Ben Johnson of the world. But
mhm.
the more I listen to what he's saying and then looking at his offense, I'm like, I actually like this hire now. But hopefully we get to see that similar offense when it comes to the Seahawks. I mean to the Cowboys.
Well, like I said, I'll say this: for those years that he was the offensive coordinator in Seattle, those were some of Russell Wilson's best seasons, and he had certainly had the most success. Part of what made his success so great was again reliance on the run, but with that reliance on the run and that being the emphasis, that opens up the play action. What does the play action do? Deep passes. What was Russell Wilson the best at?
Yeah, deep pass.
Throwing those moon balls, right?
Yes.
So Schottenheimer was real good at, kind of working in the play action, working at rollouts, working with Russ's mobility. I mean, he had a pair of stud running backs with Chris Carson, Mike Davis that one year. Um, I feel like they could probably do something a little bit similar with Dallas. I know Dak's a little bit older than when Russ was with Schottenheimer, but certainly Dak isn't a statue back there.
Yeah.
He's certainly got some athleticism. I think that could really help Dak um, moving forward, at least takes a little bit of load off his shoulders.
Yeah. Yeah, you actually got into my question is like, you think they could create some strategies and kind of create those opportunities, like going deep into what you were just saying. You
Oh
think
yeah,
they could start some more strategy with Dak? I know, like Dak isn't elusive as Russ was during those times, but I think he could be effective in those play action, like you were saying.
I totally do. I totally agree with you on that. Um, I like Dak a little bit more than I think the internet
Oh,
non-Cowboys fans. But I also realized that when was Dak Prescott at his best? He was, last year he was fantastic, but his rookie season where he had Ezekiel Elliott just running rampant, where Dak didn't necessarily have to carry the offense. He didn't have to be the guy. Now I know he's paid like the guy,
yeah,
but where I think the Cowboys are going to have the most success is when Dak is not necessarily a game manager, but where he can be surgical with
yeah,
these play action passes, with these rollouts, where the focus isn't necessarily on him.
yeah. I definitely agree. It's like having some quality running backs as well in there would definitely help us. Well, because I wouldn't mind bringing Rico back, but I would like to go into the draft and look at some of these running backs in this class because it's a deep class of running backs, and I
Hmm.
think having that type of thing, and then trying to figure out how him and Jake Ferguson have that connection when it comes to that tight end to be that safety net. And I think when Schottenheimer's offense, I think that could be a benefit, and also adding another receiver on the other side of CD Lamb will. I kind of went to the personnel, but I was just thinking about what could help this offense
Hmm.
get better because last year you were basically having guys from the practice squad being on the other side of CD Lamb, and most teams they're not going to be like, oh, we need to double team this guy and everything, but because outside of CD Lamb, you didn't really have any other receiver options out there.
No, it was. I mean, I don't say this insultingly. The Cowboys were a tough watch this year when Dak was out,
Oh,
and it was
yeah.
late in the season, and it was. I don't know. Again, I'm not a Cowboys hater by any means. I'm just a football fan.
Yeah, in those last two games, I was like, I kind of was trying to figure, y'all want to go out to eat or anything, or you want to do something else?
It's a bad day when it's your last opportunity to watch some of your last opportunity to watch your team, and you're like, oh, I mean, I got some laundry. I got
Yeah,
there's a movie out.
yeah, yeah. Your schedule opens more when your team not doing too well. You're like, oh, I'm free. Yeah, I want to do anything.
Yeah, I don't have to focus on my team for the next 4 hours of my life. Okay, all right, let's go.
Yeah, absolutely. But and lastly, kind of going into the Schottenheimer because I want to get into some Seahawks talk as
Of
well.
course.
What was like your first impression when you heard that they were getting rid of Brian Schottenheimer? Like on that day, you're like,
It felt expected almost. Um, I didn't love the move, but really that 2020 season was so weird, not just because of the COVID, but
yeah,
first few games, Seahawks are on fire. Russ is lighting up. It was the first 5-0 start in franchise history. Russell Wilson looks like he's running away with the MVP award. And then they hit a snag. They just have a total offensive meltdown through the rest of the season. Russ starts turning the ball over at an alarming rate. Uh, Pete Carroll immediately puts the kibosh on the let Russ cook movement. They start to run the ball, but they start to run the ball more. But then Russ looks uncomfortable in the offense, and they kind of limped to a 12-4 divisional record, and then they get absolutely blown out in the divisional round. The wild card round against the Rams, and they didn't look good. The offense didn't look good at all. So when that season went up in smoke at the end, it kind of felt like when they moved on, they needed to pull a lever just to pull a lever
yeah,
to make a move, because also as we look back now, fissures were appearing with Russ and the Seahawks franchise. I mean, later on that year at the Super Bowl, you saw Russ seething in the Super Bowl window with a Super Bowl press box with Roger Goodell watching Patrick Mahomes just get leveled by the Bucks, and we could kind of tell that maybe the reports of this marriage getting rocky were starting to get real. So the Seahawks moved off Schottenheimer because I think there were some philosophical differences, which that's what
yeah.
they stated.
That's,
But I think there was more differences with Schottenheimer and Russ. That's just again, this is just my gut feeling here. And um, and then they let Russ be pretty involved in picking the next offensive coordinator. And that's where they got Shane Waldron from the Los Angeles Rams at the time, who major major downgrade. um, but the fact that Russ was heavily involved in that process of picking the next coach in that regard really kind of lends credence to the fact that him and Schottenheimer weren't on the same page by the end of that season. So I didn't love it. I didn't love the move that they got rid of him, because it really felt like philosophically he was a lot more in tune with Pete Carroll, especially with the emphasis on running the ball, trying to limit turnovers, trying to be more efficient with the football. And it just the wheels fell off the track at the end of 2020.
yeah, because I remember hearing about they were saying it was between him and Pete Carroll, but the more you look at it, it kind of seemed like you were saying it's more between him and Russ. Like when I see it, I think it was between those two. But I'm excited to see what Brian Schottenheimer does for this team. Hopefully, from what I hear from with him and Dak, they're pretty close and everything. I hope that the same
Mm-hmm.
that connection is for there for a long time. But when it came, I lost my train of thought. But when you're talking about the Shane Waldron, I remember when he got the interim be the coach for the Bears last year. I remember seeing Seahawk fans saying that, "Oh, that's a dumb move right there." Because
Yeah, there was it was what was sometimes what you don't say speaks louder than anything you do say. And there was an interview with a Bears podcast with Jackson Smith and Jigba, and they asked him, "Yo, what do you think about Shane Waldron? What do you think of him as a coach? What are your thoughts on him?" He didn't say anything. He just kind of sat there awkwardly and goes, "Oh well, best of luck to Chicago," or something along those lines. And yeah, we all kind of were like, we all again. It was the funny thing about like sports in general, and we've experienced it twice now with the Seahawks. You can watch these national shows are all fun and they're wonderful and it's so great because I'm a huge fan of Cowherd. I watch First Things First a lot, First Take, whatnot. But these national shows, it's an inch deep and a mile wide. You're just getting the surface level content of these teams, and you can watch them and you can think you're an expert on every team, but really, you're not more of an expert than the people who cover the team for their careers and the fans who spend every waking moment watching those teams. So, like when the Seahawks traded Russ away, a lot of people were shocked. Some people were think it was a good move. I at the time was like, I don't know, I don't like the idea of getting rid of him. But when Broncos fans kept trying to dunk on us and run little victory laps, there was a lot of us going like, hold on now. There's a lot of baggage that comes with Russ. Now, we didn't think it was going to be as calamitous as it ended up being, but again, who's more right? People who watched some clips on YouTube or the people who watched every snap of his career for a decade?
Yeah.
Similar thing with Shane Waldron. Bears fans weren't like dunking on us, but again, we were all just like, okay, well, have fun, guys. I don't know what to say. Oh, you fired him halfway through the season? That sounds about right.
Yeah, because what I start doing when it comes to like interviews with like coaches they're interviewing, I always kind of try to look at the comments like of the fans, and if they're saying, "Oh, that's a good move by them," I'm like, "Oh, I wouldn't do that if I was y'all."
Yeah,
Because you got to look at it that way. You can't just be like you were saying, "Yeah, oh, we got Russ from y'all." I'm like you said, there's baggage when it comes to Russ in certain ways. So like I know how you had all these like with gurus and all this stuff that comes with him until he went to the Denver Broncos and
he is. Yeah, we loved him. We loved him, and when it's all said and done, I'm sure he will be. Time heals all wounds.
yeah,
I know he got booed in his first game back, but there's going to come a day where he'll be welcomed back. If he gets back in the Hall of Fame, they'll retire his jersey. They'll put him in the Ring of Honor. He'll always be the greatest quarterback the Seahawks have ever had, and maybe ever will have. I mean, quite frankly. But yeah, there's a lot of the weirdness was tolerated because he was our guy, right?
mm,
And then he goes away and he's got all the Mr. Unlimited and
oh
all the Subway commercial. We're all like,
yeah,
yeah, we know. We know it was quietly tucked away up in the Pacific Northwest where nobody pays attention to us.
yeah.
But we knew.
Y'all kept it pretty tight, but when he left Denver, like, who is this?
Yeah, it's weird because he's genuinely like a good person. He's
Yeah,
not a criminal. He doesn't have some weird salacious scandals. He's just kind of an awkward guy
yeah.
who's
That's
trying to be cool.
yeah. Those Subway commercials,
There's
those
a
are tough to watch.
there's a hilarious edit of that Subway commercial where they edited on the scene from The Dark Knight when the Joker
Oh,
crashes Bruce Wayne's party, and you hear the creepy music playing, and he's just like sitting there just eating his sandwich. If I find it, I'll send it to you. But
please do. I
it was
think
like,
I see.
it's like, oh my god, this is horrifying. Okay, I will say this before we get into the Seahawks. I just want to talk about Mike McCarthy for a second.
Okay.
I think he always got a way harsher rap than he deserved in Dallas, and I understand the playoff failures and shortcomings. There's a lot to criticize. There's a lot to talk about. I understand, but a 3-year stretch, he won 36 regular games, made the playoffs 3 times, won the division twice, won a playoff game. And I just kind of went through all the teams in the league. Counting this year, there's at least 20 teams in this league who wish their last 3 years looked like that.
Yeah.
And I think he didn't get the credit he maybe deserved.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It just when it comes to the Cowboys, if you're not even getting to the NFC Championship, they're gonna like, he sucks. I'm like, he won. He got us 12-game winning. He had the year before, barely with like all the pieces he could have, and he got us 12 games. He won us 12, helped us win 12 games. But
Mm-hmm.
this year it didn't pan out. They didn't go deep into free agency, and a lot of injuries happened. Dak was out majority of the year. So what do you expect for this year to be another 12 winning season?
I get it. You got to make a change. You got to make a change to make a change. You
Mhm.
got to shake things up. I mean, that's why I think the Steelers should probably move on from Mike Tomlin for similar reasons. Like, you just got to do something different.
Yeah.
Um, but I also think you should never let a coach be on a lame duck contract. You either decide this is our guy or this is our not. We're not just going to keep you around for one more year as a we'll see.
Yeah. Yeah, that was like the worst thing they did to him. I was like, okay, I know this is the last time we see Mike McCarthy. That like everybody's on a 1 year deal. Even the free agents that we grabbed like later on, everybody's on a 1 year deal. Hope for the best for all of y'all. If it don't work out, we'll see y'all next year. That's how this season was. It was the most weirdest Cowboy season I could think of right now. Hopefully this so when it comes to the Schottenheimer thing, I'm like, okay, maybe this is a positive outlook. I love the interview and I hope what he's saying it actually happens on the field. But
Well, and not for nothing, the team's familiar with him. He's familiar
yeah,
with the team. He's familiar
yeah,
with the quarterback. They seem to work well. So, maybe this is one of those situations where an internal hire does make the most sense, especially since, yeah, it doesn't look like it doesn't seem like anybody was truly in the Aaron Glenn or Ben Johnson sweepstakes except for Chicago and New York. So I get it.
yeah. And those make sense. I kind of when the more I think about it, like okay, if you hire a new coach, you basically got to start a whole different 360. But at least you got an internal coach. Like okay, it's not going to be too much of a big difference, but in certain scenarios, but at least you know who the coach is. Not, but now he's the head coach.
Hmm.
So far, I give it a B hiring. The more I think about it, I know I was like some of the Cowboy fans are like, I don't like this hiring and all that. But the more I started looking into it, like, okay, I like this hiring. But you just wish they kind of interviewed outside of the Cowboys and some random coaches they hired. They interviewed.
Well, let's look at the rosiest outlook. The biggest criticism I'm seeing out there, and certainly from people I know and texted me about it, the consensus is, oh, this is just a puppet for Jerry. Well, the last coach in the NFC East who I thought was a clear puppet hire was Nick Sirianni, and he's just now in his second Super Bowl. So who knows? You never know. That's why you play the games.
Yeah, and that was another looks can be deceiving. If I don't, you can go back to his interview when it's a press
Oh,
conference. That was painful to watch.
it's like the meme of the kid he's recalling his dream, and it's just word salad. That's what it
Yeah,
felt like.
that's what it was. Where do you rank? Did you get to see the Liam Cohen trying to do the Duval?
Oh, that was almost that might have been worse actually,
Yeah,
because at least Sirianni clearly, like, that was a guy, like, that was bad, but that
yeah,
was clearly a guy who, like, had never done it before and was obviously very nervous, and he just, I'm sure in that moment that's crazy overwhelming, especially if you never had that kind of training before. That was just like, that's not going to work out. That's not going to work out in Jacksonville. I'm happy to place any kind of wager on that. That guy, I don't like how he became the coach. It felt snaky.
yeah,
He feels very surface level. I don't know. That was pretty cringy.
yeah. I feel like when the owners and they're like, "Crap, I think we messed up." When they heard that, because he said it so confidently too. It wasn't like a maybe I should try. He's like Duval.
Yeah, it was almost like seductive. I didn't like it.
Oh, and I didn't know he looked like that. He like I seen the comments they saying he looked like Weasley off of Harry Potter. I was like, yeah, I cannot see that now.
That's insulting to Ron Weasley.
Yeah, but I'm surprised he didn't comment and say, "What y'all say?"
Yeah, no,
But
I'm glad that is not my head coach.
same here. So we get into some Seahawks talk.
All right.
Yeah, Mike McDonald. What's your impressions on his first year with the Seahawks?
Honestly, I think the Seahawks overall first year head coach, you win 10 games, You're within one game of making the playoff, one game of winning the division. Now, I get it with the 17 game schedule. We probably are going to need to, as a country, recalibrate what we consider a successful season, because with an expanded playoff, 10 wins should maybe be bare minimum. But first year head coach, first time, really his whole staff was a bunch of first year guys. Ryan Grubb, first year in the NFL. Jay Harbaugh, first year in the NFL. Aiden Durday, your guy, first year defensive coordinator. And yet, with all that, trying to find identity, he fixed the defense. He finally snapped the losing streak to the Niners. We went 3-3. We went 4-2 in the division. 4-2 in the division. And again, 1 game away from the playoffs. I feel like that was overall pretty successful. I mean, I guess there are the hardliners who say, if you don't make the playoffs, it's a failure, and I understand that to a degree. But overall, I'm really incredibly optimistic about what McDonald brings. I mean, his system, everybody's thriving defensively in his system. He's way more detail oriented. He certainly is someone who wants to make sure the Seahawks are focusing on the little things. Like the Seahawks had the best tackling I've seen from them in years, and there's still a lot of room for growth. I still think there's a talent gap overall, but I really like what he's bringing to the table.
Yeah, and a lot of people are like too critical, but like you said, this is first year. Majority of his staff, like you said, this is their first year doing this. Like you had Harbaugh, who was at Michigan. Aiden was our defensive line coach. He was defensive line coach most of his short career. And who's the offensive coordinator? I don't want to. Oh, it was Grubbs.
Ryan Grubbs from Huskies.
Yeah.
So, gone.
Yeah. We're gonna actually talk about that a little bit in my next question. But yeah, you had a lot of guys that are basically learning together, but you had to win a season. It was just one, like you said, there's one game short from the playoffs. So imagine what year 2 could be, and now you're adding a new offense coordinator, who I want to talk about is who you actually wrote an article. What is your thoughts on about Clint Kubiak being the offensive coordinator now?
Admittedly, this is someone who was nowhere on my radar until we started reading that he was getting interviews, and then it's like, okay, start looking into him. I'm pretty optimistic about Kubiak. I think certainly having whatever your opinion on Geno Smith is, I think we can all agree he is a clear-cut upgrade over Derek Carr and Spencer Rattler and Taysom Hill and that other guy. I don't even remember his name with the Saints. He's clear-cut upgrade over that. He's going to a much more stable, functioning franchise, the New Orleans Saints, a team that's somehow not in cap hell perpetually. So I really think that was a strong hire. I think the other thing about him is he has something that Ryan Grubb did not have: NFL play calling experience. Clint Kubiak, Clint Kubiak was the offensive coordinator for the play caller for the Saints last year, and then in 2021 he was the play caller for the Vikings. That's 2 years of being a play caller, whereas Grubb, he's never been in the NFL before, and then suddenly, hey, bring your offense to the professional league. And his inexperience was very evident at times. So I think the Seahawks definitely wanted to have somebody who has his feet more than a little bit wet with that in regards to calling plays.
Yeah, and then you add, and he's another young mind, but with experience in the pro level. You kind of got to see a little bit of the positive when he was the coordinator for the Saints, but the Saints, like you said, it's not a well-tuned machine. It's kind of a little bit of everywhere. They're still looking for a coach right now. I think it's leaning towards Kellen Moore or Mike McCarthy, or it could be some rant or some coach that we're not even thinking about right now. We're still trying to figure out what the Saints are going to do.
Yeah, that's a franchise that hasn't really known what to do since Drew Brees retired.
That's true. I've talked to a couple of Saints fans, and they wished I wish they would have kind of developed a quarterback behind Drew Brees, but they were like holding on by a thread with Drew Brees for the longest. And that last year with Drew Brees was painful to watch.
I think. I mean, I guess I understand and I respect the fact that they went all in Drew Brees' last few years
Yeah.
with the cap, with free agents, just building up a roster, just be like, hey, we owe it to this guy to try and give one last bite at the apple. And when he retired, that should have been the moment we're done blowing it up and starting from scratch. Fire sale, everybody gone. We're starting this thing over. But instead, they just kind of were like, nah, we can just kind of cobble together the same squad and just go from there. And
Yeah.
it's been weird. It's been weird these last few years for them.
Yeah. And I remember how they try to gas up the Derek Carr trade, like, oh, this is the piece that's gonna get the Saints over the hump. I was like, he's been to the playoff one time in his whole over decade career, and that's it.
Yeah, tough.
Yeah,
Tough look.
very
So yeah,
true.
overall, I am excited. I'm excited for Kubiak. I think I'm intrigued, and I always thought his dad Gary was also one of the more underrated head coaches when he was a top man.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Oh, so one of my I wanted, before I let you go, I want to kind of go on, to the draft a little bit with the Seahawks. What are like some positions you hope they go through in the first 3 rounds this year in the draft?
Can I just say guard for all three? Okay, for sake of variety, no, I'm not going to say that. Number one, that is their Achilles heel by far. They need to finally figure out how to dress this offensive line, specifically the interior of this offensive line, specifically guard. They have the two worst guards in football this year. Geno Smith, I don't know how he was able to do what he could behind that offensive line, because any other quarterback would just be, unless they're Lamar Jackson or Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen, they'd just be toast. So I hope they focus their energy on guard. Regardless of what they do with DK Metcalf, I hope they keep him. I really hope they keep him, and I think it'd be very foolish for the Seahawks to move on from him. I do think they should address receiver, because no matter what Tyler Lockett's done, whether he decides to retire or they decide to cut him, unless they cut him and he decides to come back on a veteran minimum contract, I don't see any scenario in which Tyler Lockett's coming back to the Seahawks this year. I mean, all the writing's been on the wall for about a year or two now, and then the last game of the season, they made him a team captain, and they had all kinds of "thank you, Tyler" posts on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. So it's like, ooh, okay, I read between the lines, and so they need. I think they'll need somebody, whether or not they trade DK. And if they do trade DK, then they're definitely going to need somebody, because Jackson Smith and Jig was fantastic. He's a fabulous receiver. I don't know if even after this year he's ready to be just the guy, and I don't even think that that's even sustainable in today's NFL. You need at least two stud receivers to be competitive and keep up with some of these offenses. So there's number one and number two, and then number three, cornerback. We got Devin Witherspoon, who's a stud. Tariq Woolen is an interesting case. On paper, he should be so much better than I think he is. And then frustratingly, we see moments of that greatness. But then we see times where it just looks like, I mean, I don't want to question effort. I never want to get into that regard. But there's times where it just looks like he should be making more plays than he does. And I'm not sure what the situation is there, but there's been there's always been kind of questions like, is, coachability an issue? I don't know. But there were times this season where he let up some huge plays. I mean, that it lost to the Rams in overtime. 4 plays, Rams win the game. They target him for 3 of the plays, including the touchdown. And then on the one time they didn't, he had an opportunity to get a game-changing interception and just didn't. So I think that they definitely need to focus on cornerback, because they drafted a kid out of Auburn. His name is escaping me at the moment. I forgive them. Forgive me. They cut him. He didn't even make it out of preseason.
Oh, yeah.
Failure in scouting department. They had Trey Brown, who's been on and off a pretty good player, but then he lost his job to Josh Jobe, the guy they signed off the practice squad, who was fine, but that's not a game-changing kind of guy. So I think they definitely need to spend some money in, or at least either spend some money in the free agency or focus on the draft, building up that cornerback room.
Yeah, when it comes to corner, you can never have too many good corners.
Mhm.
because sometimes corners will be really good next year, and next year it could be one play and that confidence goes. And like
Yeah,
you need at least about four good
yeah.
corners just in case.
It's like, oh no, we have too many good relief pitchers. It's similar situation.
Yeah, because y'all, you're basically your draft needs are almost similar to what we need. I, w- you could say guard, but I kind of like how we seen with Brock Hoffman and corner. We definitely need because with Trayvon Diggs, we don't know how he's going to be after
Hmm.
that surgery, those lower body injuries. So like, yeah, we might need to be looking
Especially
at
well, especially the older you get too.
yeah,
You know, not everybody is freak of nature Tom Brady.
yeah,
You know,
we can play into
perfect
there.
ligaments.
Yeah, be still playing in his mid 40s where he should be commentating a long time ago or doing whatever Tom Brady.
And it's funny because his last year he wasn't even that bad. He still had like what 25 touchdowns and
Yeah,
he won the division. It's so funny. Tom Brady's worst season, first losing season, they still win the division.
yeah,
They
yeah.
still make the
That
playoffs, and
the NFC South is a weird division where a team could be 8 and 9, but you can still have a chance to go to the playoffs. And it don't make any
Mhm.
sense. And
and you just got to be a little bit above mediocre, and boom, you're in. And then once you're in the playoffs, you've bought a lottery ticket. So
that's basically what it is. It's like there's always just one team out of the NFC South now. It's just like, okay, if we're just a little bit better than so and so, we'll make it to the playoffs. It's not really a competition in that division yet.
no, and
Well,
they could have beat the Bucks could have beat the Commanders. I mean, they had a late fumble that was unfortunate, but
yeah,
they were in that game and they win that game. They're giving Detroit a fight. I don't think they're beating Detroit, but at least that's going to be a competitive game.
yeah. The Bucks are actually our competitive team. It's just you kind of really expect a little outside of the Bucks. You always think the Falcons. Okay, this is where the Falcons are going to be a little bit better, and they're like, y'all just still the same.
No,
Saints, I don't know what y'all doing. Panthers, y'all still got a long ways, but y'all showing a little bit of promise now.
they might have something cooking, but they're at least 2 years away from being something if they get all the right breaks.
Yeah, that's what they need. Is like they've been in the top 5 draft picks for a little bit, so we need to figure something out or what's going
Well, hey,
on.
it's for all your frustrations with Jerry Jones. At least it's not Tepper. You don't have to deal with him as your owner. So
Oh, uh, yeah, that's very true. Like I could have Tepper.
it's, Jerry's problem is he sticks with the guy maybe a little bit too long. That guy will just like burn through
Oh,
players and coaches too
yeah,
fast.
yeah. If he liked Jerry likes you, he's gonna keep you for the longest as he can. And it basically everybody will tell him it's time to let him go. Like, no, I like this guy.
They're
That's
family. He's a family man.
yeah, that's Jerry. You just remind me of that show he was talking on. Was it Landman?
Oh
Or
yeah, and he's being wistful about like he loves his people, and it's like oh that's probably Jerry probably meant every word he said. That's probably
yeah,
why he held on to Jason Garrett for 45 years.
that man, he kept Jason Garrett for most of my 20s. I was like, dang, I know you've been knowing Jason Garrett's like your other son, but it's time to let him go. It's okay, it's okay, Jerry.
He's an adult. He's an adult who's made millions. He'll be okay.
Yeah, he's treating him like he's like a little kid. Like, no, we can't take you to McDonald's. No, he's a grown man. He can move on.
I love the oh man, I haven't thought about that guy in a long time.
Yeah, he's on NBC now. I'm
Hmm.
surprised he's a commentator, but I'm glad Jason Garrett's doing is able to still be around. And when it comes to football, I don't have nothing ill will towards him, but it was time
Seems
for
like
let
the
him go.
seems like the nicest guy, but yeah,
Yeah,
you could be a good king or a good man. Can't be both.
that's true. But yeah, but I appreciate you, Cole, for being on the show today. We definitely got to
Yeah,
get you back
absolutely.
on again.
Absolutely, I'm always available. You have my contact information. You know how to reach
All right.
me. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Incredible. incredible amount. And yeah, best of luck to Brian Schottenheimer, except when he plays the Seahawks.
Absolutely. I hope it's a great game when we play against y'all because it's always ends up being a tough game between y'all. There's been some history where y'all done broke our heart a few times. I'm not gonna go into deep details about that.
I will. I'll leave with this because I can't help but not leave with
I
this.
love
So I've been blessed to have the opportunity to cover the Seahawks live for home games this past couple of years, and one game last year I actually sat next to Jordan Babineau, and and I sat there the whole game, talked pleasantries, whatnot. It wasn't until the very end of the game that I kind of leaned over to him. I was like, Mr. Babineau, I'm sorry to bother you, but I couldn't help myself. I did text my friend who is a Cowboys fan, who I'm sitting next to. And then he just kind of like nudges my shoulders, gives me a wink, and tells me, let him know. And then he just walked away.
Man. Yeah.
It was such a surreal experience. I didn't think it even happened. I'm like, was this real?
I'm glad you got that experience, but now I just got flashbacks from that moment what you're talking about right now.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. Hey, we started the podcast talking about the Seahawks lose to the Cowboys in the wild card round. We got to bookend it.
Yeah, I guess that was a sad but somber ending. Appreciate you, Cole. This has been Taco Touchdown. Y'all have a good one. Peace.
You too.